Hey, everyone. Happy Thursday. You know, no matter how hot you are, you can't escape the hype cycle. We're going to talk about all things AI today, as well as a brave new world of aviation. You're watching Techstrong Gang. Hi, everyone. Happy Thursday. It's Alan Schimmel from Techstrong for Techstrong Gang. You know, what goes up must come down. Well, not always, but perhaps we're seeing this going on in AI. We're going to have what I think is going to be a vigorous debate and discussion on that today. I'm looking forward to it. We have a bunch more really good topics to bring up. They're all sort of AI related in some respect. But before we do, let me introduce you to our great panel we've got lined up for you today, both here locally in our Boca headquarters and studios, as well as literally spanning the continent. So we'll go west to east and start off with our editor, John Swartz, special editor. Hey, John, welcome. Hope all's well out there on the left coast.
Things are all great here on the left coast. It's great to be here as always.
Thank you, John. Joining us from his perch high atop the Rocky Mountains, our CTO and future CTA, Mitch Ashley. Hey, Mitchell, welcome.
Just breathing the smoke from the left coast here in Colorado. Hope you all do okay out there. I feel so bad with all the fires, but we're doing okay.
There's fires by you too, isn't there, Mitchell?
We do. We just had some up by Longmont. Yeah.
I saw our friend Julie Church, who used to work with us at Still Secure, the ridge next to her was ablaze, and she had to evacuate her.
Doing evacuations. We're dealing with it here. We're contributing to smoke too, so I can't complain about anybody else's smoke.
This is your fault.
Well, maybe we should have Bonnie comment on it. So that's a great segue to our Echo Insights sustainability analyst and editor of our Echo Insights, the series of podcasts, videos, articles, Bonnie Schneider. Hey, Bonnie.
Hey, Alan. Great to be here.
So this is an every year thing already.
Yeah, and unfortunately, it's getting worse. Climate change has brought out more expansive wildfires affecting more people.
I mean, we lost Lahaina in Maui last year, right? I don't know when and if it'll ever be what it is, but it's a reoccurring thing. And I don't think it's a question of leaving too many leaves on the floor, as some politicians might think. They like simple answers to complex questions. So does everyone. Anyway, moving beyond Bonnie, I don't know if he's a simple answer to a complex question or not. It's our Chief Content Officer, Mike Bizarre. Hey, Mike.
Once I heard that word simple, I knew you were coming my way.
Yeah. It was only a matter of time. Anyway, all right. So let's kick it off today. You know, you just can't escape the hype cycle. And every technology innovation that I've seen in 30 plus years has none of them can escape the gravity of the hype cycle. That being said, is this one different? I don't know, but certainly AI skepticism seems on the rise, Mike. We've got a bunch of sources in the notes here, including a great article by John on techstrong.ai. And what do you think?
Well, I'm going to think two things about this. One is there's tons of VC money going into these large language models that seem very expensive to maintain and update on an ongoing basis, and how they're going to pay for that is unclear. And I think the folks at Wall Street are beating up on that fact. And then the second thing is, in addition to John's article, there's a post on Techstrong AI talking about the amount of money that enterprises are going to be spending. And on the one hand, it says on average, it's $47.5 million on Gen AI. But then it also points out that a lot of that money is being repurposed from projects that they were already spending money on. So it's kind of like double counting.
Net new money.
It's not net new money. Mm-hmm. And I think we saw some of that reflected in the Microsoft results this past week. But John, what's your take? What are they saying in the Valley? Is this kind of starting to feel like, Panic City out there?
It's starting to feel a little bit like 1998, 1999. And I just want to kind of go back and talk about a couple of proof points. There's a survey that's coming out that 72% of consumers aren't using AI. There was an article in The Information, which was really interesting, about OpenAI itself, it burning through cash, $5 billion loss this year. There were the Microsoft results, which disappointed some in terms of what you just mentioned. It all really underscores this idea that we're really early in the game and the expectations are outsized on generative AI. We had a conference call with the Salesforce Chief AI Officer, Clara Shih, on Monday, and she referred to this year as AI's version of 1998 for the internet. She says the hype cycle is basically in the early stages, and as these companies lay the groundwork for AI operations, there is no immediate payoff. This is an investment. This is going to take a year or two to eventually lead to a payoff. Even our own Daniel Newman from the Futurum Group put it well this week. He said on X that the digestion period for AI is likely more 3 to 4 quarters at least, rather than a few quarters. So again, we create this industry of this tech movements where we expect everything to change immediately. And these things take time, and the investment will eventually pay off for some, not everyone. So we're seeing a bit of panic and cracks in the fissure right now.
So I want to take a contrary position. First of all, 72% of consumers don't use AI. No, they use AI. They just don't know they use AI, right? When people are doing Google searches and they're reading that first result, which is AI generated, when they read stories on not our sites, but on other sites that are written by AI, when they're doing shopping on Amazon and or anywhere, all of these things have AI components in them. They may not have a flashing light bulb that says this was generated in AI or AI was used in the making of this. So most consumers wouldn't know, right? Most consumers say, I don't go to ChatGPT and therefore I don't use AI. So I think that's a red herring. I think it's a big red herring.
Just really quickly, when we talk about that poll, whether it's 70% or if it's lower of folks who say they don't use it, that's still there. At least 30% of folks are using Gen AI within 18 months of its debut, which is
absolutely
a number when you think about it. It's probably much higher than 30%.
I think people are interacting with AI generated stuff all the time. Are they actually prompting themselves? Okay, maybe 70% don't prompt.
And is it stuff that makes money, or is it just noise because Google's creating a thing that is a summary of something, but people are like, well, so what?
I like the AI summaries Google has. I've been using those more because I'm fed up with looking at, on your average Google search today, there's 6 sponsored links, 3 organic links. I use the AI generated link. And, shame on Google for going that route. But let's look at some of the other things here. The story about the $5 billion cash burn at OpenAI, what was it, The Information?
The Information,
yeah. Like such a hit piece to me. I read that 2 days ago too, and I'm thinking, who paid them for this? Because it was short. It was like Deep Throat, right? Unnamed sources, Deep Throat said they broke into the Watergate Hotel. There was nothing there to show that that's real. And even if they were burning a couple $1 billion, they have the ability to go raise.
Yes, exactly.
VCs know better. They'd give them money in a heartbeat.
They did raise at least $13 billion through Microsoft's investment alone. And this idea that they would file for bankruptcy, which is mentioned in the article.
They're filing for bankruptcy. That was just, come on, man. Someone should get shot for that.
Amazon was hit many times for the investments it made and the amount of money it was losing for years.
Absolutely. I remember those days.
And Salesforce as well. But at some point, that money has to get made back by somebody.
At some point, they're barely 2 years in.
Yeah, they're
at what current rate of revenue will it take them to recur the investments that?
Look, this is your typical venture, and VCs know it, and that's why they're still inventing. You know what you're looking for? The hockey stick. When it hockey sticks, it's all small potatoes. Small potatoes.
I think the difference here, Alan, too, is, AI is not a feature in many cases, or not a product. It's a feature inside of it.
It's a feature. So it's very hard to put your thumb on it.
Yeah, it's going to be uneven in how it grows. It's not suddenly going to take off and everybody's got Copilot across the world. Now we're all
hockey sticks into hockey sticks. Right. And then Microsoft. Look, I think Microsoft AI got a bum rap because Azure didn't have a good quarter, right? That's not AI's fault in my mind, but, they're blaming it on AI here, and Microsoft took a beating.
They were making the assessment that AI should have pulled more revenue up for cloud since that's the delivery vehicle.
But
AI.
what really happened here was Azure didn't do well, right? And so you're looking at AI as a savior. Well, look, every time, the Great White Hope. Is AI the new Great White Hope? Come on. I don't blame AI for that either.
How much?
Well, Alan, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Adam.
I was just going to say, how much of it is employee adoption of AI, though?
That's a great point. I mean, we're going to have a segment later when we talk about that even more in depth. But the fact of the matter is that people are being trained on something that's fairly new to them. They're not going to be optimally efficient with something that they just learned how to use or something they're just using or learn. And to expect instant productivity and operational efficiency and revenue, it's just it's completely unrealistic.
If you go back and look, Alan, if you go back and look at Gartner's 2023 hype cycle for AI, generative AI is at the very top of the peak of inflation. I kind of feel like we're stuck in the high 90s temperature, like in Colorado. It just stays there, and we're still there today. We're still at the top. We're not on the other side of this yet. Of the rushing down to the top.
I don't know if we've actually hit the trowel, right? Because it goes
we've got a ways to go.
I think you're barely over the apex.
That's my point, is we're still at the top, just at the top of the roller coaster here.
Absolutely.
I think the expectations for Gen AI were set all wrong. I think that the enterprises and all these business execs thought that this was a magic silver bullet and it was going to do all this amazing stuff overnight. And so they were like, oh, all these processes are going to be automated. Didn't realize that Gen AI is probabilistic, so it's an advisor, it's a good guess. But a lot of these business execs, I think, thought it was going to be this deterministic thing that they would just slide into their process. Mm-hmm. And they are now realizing that this thing needs to be engineered into those processes, and that takes time.
I'll go one better to you on that. That's not what they thought. You know what they thought? They could cut heads by using AI. And so in a tech industry that was doing massive layoffs, the real going on there was no big deal. We're going to have AI and we're going to be even more productive. And what they're finding is AI doesn't necessarily replace a lot of jobs. Not today anyway. I went to dinner a couple nights ago with my friend John Willis, right? And John is up to his ears in AI, right? He
was on the show earlier this week.
Yes, he mentioned it. That was Monday, I think, right? I went to dinner with him Tuesday, and anyway, he's doing this series of workshops on vector databases and using AI for coding and so forth like that. And he's saying in his work with developers, what AI is generating code-wise right now is about 30% of the code that you need to get things done, but it's going up and being refined constantly. John's take was, look, in 2-3 years, I don't know if you're going to need developers. Now, he's being, I think, overhyped. Mm-hmm. But, we've got to give, this is, the internet was around 15 years or 20 years before it went commercial, right? We were all, well, not all of us, but some of us were doing wide area searches and Gopher and stuff like that before there was a web
crawler.
AI's been around 30, 40 years, the principles behind it, but the OpenAI chatbot came out, November will be 2 years. Talk to me in 2 years. And I think the smart money knows that. And that's why, in spite of all the smoke we see here, VC money is still pouring in.
See, I think the wise investment is really understanding the problems that are best solved with AI. That's the phase we're in. It's not the rush to go buy every AI tool and we suddenly solved all of our problems. The experience around non-deterministic answers. Well, when can you use that? How can you tighten that up? How do we manage our own data and protect it from going into models that we don't want it to. I mean, all those issues that we're learning about and also going down the wrong path. Like that was the wrong app to do with Gen AI. We should have built a ML model or something else. Mm-hmm. So we're still very much in the learning phase about.
Yeah, it's the experimenting, right? Like a teenager or an adolescent experiment.
I would say wherever there's smoke, as we have seen earlier in the conversation, there's fire. And the thing that's on fire is cash.
And there's plenty of cash in the world. But I do like the way you brought that back, Mike. That is good. Anyway, hey, we got to take a break here on Techstrong Gang. I almost said Techstrong AI, but we do have Techstrong AI. Anyway, we're going to take a break, and we're going to come back on continuing on this AI train. Does AI increase employee burnout? Does it cause cancer? What's next? You're watching Techstrong Gang.
All right, we're back. And originally, when AI first came out, at least Gen AI, we were all talking about how this would automate things and save toil and maybe eliminate jobs. But we have an article up on Techstrong AI where it seems to be increasing people's burnout. And the subject seems to be that as you increase the volume of work, there's an impedance mismatch in the ability of humans to kind of process all of that and to orchestrate all those additional things that they're now supposed to manage. But John, I know you've been talking to folks over at Salesforce and other folks, and there is this whole conversation about, well, what is the ROI benefit? What is the impact on people? And so what are you hearing?
Well, Gen AI in a sense it's considered a savior, and I think somebody referred to it as a great white hope. But in a sense, it's been put at a disadvantage. When it first kind of gained momentum, we were in this era, or on the tail end of an era, where companies were furiously trying to figure a way to cut back. They were on the downside of the COVID boost for business, especially for tech companies. We were stuck at home. We were using online services more than ever. And then we were going through this era of cost cutting, especially out here in Silicon Valley. And the idea was AI would magically appear and it would replace jobs and make it everything would be much more efficient. And, now that's not the case. Now we have people trying to learn how to use it because they're not being displaced. So there's this learning curve that's taking place. It's going on for quite a while. We actually did a segment on this, I believe, about the training issues and how it's not catching on as quickly as possible. Plus, we have the pressure from the CEO level on down for efficiency, which puts a lot more pressure on the engineers. And we've talked about that as well. In a sense, again, we're part of this victim of a hype cycle. And the employees are feeling the pinch because they are still there, but they have to coexist with AI. They don't know exactly whether they should trust it or how to use it. They eventually will. Again, they will. It takes time, but I mean, notoriously, Silicon Valley is one of the most impatient places in the world. And I think this is where we are now. And it will get better, but for now, it's probably a miserable experience internally.
You're being kind about the Valley because I spent 10 years out there, and you couldn't meet a bunch of people who are more divorced from reality than the people in the Valley, especially all the vendors that work there. Mm-hmm. They have very little knowledge about how actually anything that they build gets used by folks on the other side of the country in the East Coast, Midwest, and how that whole thing.
Or in the West Coast too. They could care less. I mean, it's like a total disconnect. You're totally right.
I think you want to talk about divorce from reality. Where we live is pretty divorced from reality. You're talking about a bubble.
Yeah, be careful with glass houses there.
Yeah, but that being said, I do want to point out this was not a Techstrong.ai story. It was on our digital CXO outlet. And for those of you who are not familiar, digital CXO is our site aimed at C-level, across all C-level disciplines, whether it's finance, tech, product, exec, whatever. And it's a great site for these, when you're talking about these kinds of things. So I just want to put a quick plug in there for digital CXO. I think the reason for this goes back to our previous discussion. Mitchell, you mentioned AI adoption and use is sort of lumpy. And so what's happening is where it is being used, it's like akin to when we were starting to do a lot of automation in DevOps, right? All of a sudden, if you were automating something, you didn't have enough humans to keep up with it. And we started having all of these discussions at like Gene Kim's DevOps Enterprise Summit, whatever the name is now, about employee burnout and stuff, because automation was pushing them to go faster, until the automation kind of works its way through the entire cycle and through the entire process. You're going to have those kinds of it's like driving on a highway and you go from, 70 miles an hour and all of a sudden you got red traffic again. I think that it's due to the nature of AI adoption, if anything.
Well, I think it's also the extremely overinflated expectations. We're talking about firestorms in the West in Colorado. When fires get big enough, they create their own weather. Bonnie can tell us all about that, right?
Okay.
And that's essentially what AI has been doing, creating its own weather, where the expectations all the way up to the C-suite, maybe from the C-suite down, are they're believing their own hype and everybody else's, which is this is going to change everything. So we got to change everything before we're eliminated and we lost out. When in fact, we really need to think of this as not just productivity of workers and processes. What's the productivity of AI? How is AI itself helping us? And what is our learning curve for it being able to make an impact? And that's what it's taking. You don't put the internet out there to everybody and suddenly we're in 2024 and we're operating in a full, almost full digital economy. It is a cycle. It's a growth path. And part of that, executives do it to themselves. We do it to ourselves as technologists of overhyping the technology, maybe to get funding, maybe just because we're excited about it and it's the next shiny thing. But you have to have some realistic expectations. And companies who are, I think you mentioned the layoffs, Alan. I think some of those layoffs and saying AI is going to replace workers, that was just an excuse. They probably didn't really believe that, but it's easy for the market to accept that as an answer because everybody else is doing it, when in reality, they're going to retool with different skills. Maybe some of it is AI or not. But the point being is AI has its own learning and productivity curve of how we use it. And we're on that treadmill. And how can we get the most from it? The quickest.
I was talking to a developer this morning about the John Willis comment about 2 years from now, we won't need developers, et cetera, et cetera. He was pointing out, basically he called BS on the whole thing. He said, what? I spent maybe 20% of my time actually writing code. The rest of my time is spent problem solving and figuring out what the thing that needs to be fixed is and how it's going to be done and how it's going to be constructed. He says, AI is not going to do that for me anytime soon.
Why not?
Because basically the issue is the level of reasoning required and the understanding of the problem isn't capable to teach to the LLM, because the problems are new all the time. It's not the same old problem. It's not the same old repetitive thing. Every time we're trying to build a piece of software that's truly innovative, we're doing something completely new and different. It requires a human brain.
To me, this is the classic thesis, synthesis, antithesis, synthesis thing, right? And is that the ultimate aim of what? Can't we have our AI do that? Or is that really a human function?
I think if you need to rewrite a piece of code or to use a code over again and to have AI generate something in a very structured way that you know what you're going to do and and cut and paste.
That's an AI thing. But can AI figure out why it's not working?
Yes, but can AI figure out that we need this to do this way, and this is an opportunity to use software to automate a thing? No. So the core idea for the doing of the thing in the first place seems to me is always going to be a human.
There's estimates, different numbers. I think the most recent I saw was in the last 20 years, there have been 2.8 trillion lines of code written, new code written. So when we say AI is going to replace developers, is AI going to take over all the 2.8 trillion lines of code and generate new code in one step? So all due respect to John Willis, who I love and he's a great guy, is making a statement like we won't need the developers anymore is nonsensical. Is it going to replace what developers are doing or change their job? Sure, but it's not going to take over everything that's out there. It's just not reality.
You know, it's
feeding the hype cycle.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I always wonder, like in the end, how really pervasive all of this is going to end up being. Really, right? People are resistant to change. They don't want to try to learn something new. I mean, a vast majority of people, like even go back to the consumers using Gen I, arguably how many use it. I just wonder how pervasive and how influential all of this is actually going to end up being in the next, for at least 5 years. It's probably going to be a gradual move, right? But people out here assume everything's going to change because they think it's going to change. They don't think about the practical uses Mike mentioned among like the everyday people. I mean, this is the ultimate bubble within a bubble. People have these concepts and they put them on a whiteboard and they stand around and they ooh and they ah, but it doesn't really translate often into real life.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's going to take time with just the process of using AI and developers and seeing what can they do, what can't they do, what is it, what kind of mistakes are being made, and where does the human need to come in and correct them. And that's all going to change over the next few years.
I agree. Well, maybe we could do a 5 or 10 year reunion and look back on this. but let's bring it back to burnout, though. Do we really think employees are getting burned out employees are getting burned out for sure. Burnout is real. Is AI increasing it, I guess, is really my question.
I think it'll be a curve. I think it'll increase it while we figure out how to make it work. And then longer term, it might reduce it. But initially, I think change is stress.
Mm-hmm. And pressure.
Well, I haven't seen the burnout curve increase, but I'm not watching it closely either. To me, if that's true, if we're seeing increase in burnout because people are using AI, that tells me AI is not yet productive enough to displace the work it takes to use it and use its output versus not using it at all. That doesn't mean it's bad. It just means we're still in that learning curve of how best to use it. And if it's adding work and not displacing other work, or changing it and making existing work more efficient, that we're just not there yet on that productivity curve I was talking about.
I think Mitch is right. It's like it's creating more work right now rather than reducing it. That's what the rub is. I think within a lot of companies, I think that's what they're discovering to their dismay.
I'll make it simple, right? Salesforce also had a report.
Simple.
Yeah.
Here we go.
Salesforce had this report talking about how salespeople were using more of AI with mixed results. But let's just say I had a sales rep capable of managing actively 8 accounts. Now with AI, they're managing 3 times as many. But humans aren't really set up to manage 3 times as many accounts because there's just more things to think about, more pieces to kind of work through. And ultimately that will stress them out.
Absolutely. Absolutely. All right. Before we get burned out, let's take a break here on Techstrong Gang. We're going to come back and we got a great segment. Bonnie's going to lead here on the brave new world of aviation. Stay tuned. You're watching Techstrong Gang.
I'm Bonnie Schneider, sustainability contributor to the Techstrong Group. I'm excited to introduce you to a groundbreaking new initiative from Techstrong Research, the Sustainability Pulse Meter. The Pulse Meter offers valuable insights into how environmental responsibility factors into tech purchasing decisions for key players in the industry. Position your company as a leader in the industry and differentiate from your competitors with the Sustainability Pulse Meter, offered exclusively from Techstrong Research.
When it comes to climate change and reducing emissions, one of the biggest problems is transportation, specifically aviation. So innovative tech thinkers are saying, okay, well, how can we have flights that are zero emissions and run on sustainable fuel versus jet fuel? I just had to take a closer look to see where we are now in this technology and what needs to come in the future in order to have more eco-friendly flying.
Hi everyone, I'm Bonnie Schneider with your Ecotech Analyst Insights. The aviation world is under immense pressure to make travel more sustainable. One of the most talked about developments is the emergence of the electric aircraft. These all-electric planes could revolutionize short-haul flights. Powered by lithium-ion batteries, these electric flights produce zero direct emissions. Sustainable aviation fuels, or SAFs, are emerging as a viable alternative to traditional jet fuel. SAFs are produced from sources like agricultural and municipal solid waste, or even carbon dioxide captured from the air. Another promising technology is based on the power of hydrogen. While this technology is still in its early stages, hydrogen has the potential to become a game changer. That's because it produces no direct carbon emissions and can be produced using renewable energy sources. There's also exciting innovations in aircraft design. The Sustainable Flight National Partnership of NASA is working on developing technologies like advanced wing designs, hybrid electric propulsion systems, and boundary layer ingestion to optimize fuel efficiency and reduce noise pollution. These cutting-edge technologies are challenging the aviation industry to rethink its approach and prioritize sustainability from the ground up.
So one of the issues that I didn't address, because it's so exciting to think about this as a prospect, is infrastructure changes. Let's say we have more electric flights. Okay, well, then we have to make changes to all our airports to make sure that they can host these electric flights. And we also have to consider what would be the cost then to get a ticket on an electric flight. How expensive is that going to be? So there's still a lot of different areas that need to be thought out on this exciting prospect.
I don't know if it would necessarily cost more. I mean, you just got to bring in some DC current to charge these batteries. I think what's interesting, though, and this is not just as it relates to this particular topic, but, you know, the idea of getting in a car that is electric battery powered, people get some anxiety about range. But in terms of, it's the same. Look, it even goes faster than a regular car. You tell them they're going to get an electrically battery-powered airplane? Oh, no, I'm not.
That's what
No, I'm not. But it's the same thing. People don't realize that, without a doubt, flying in an airline is the safest form of transportation basically in the world, right? It's much, much safer than cars. It's probably much, much safer than, it's not probably, it is much safer than trains, automobiles, even boats, I would venture. But when you start talking about new powertrains for planes, people get a little edgy.
Yeah.
And I think there's going to be a lot of reluctance to it.
It's not like we're refueling our aircraft, our airliners in midair, if we're low on fuel, right? We deal with range anxiety today, if you will, on regular aircraft. One of the things I wonder, though, about, Bonnie, I don't know if they've talked about, seems to me the weight difference is much greater, just like it is on cars, for the kind of batteries you would need. And maybe the, solid state batteries will help that as well. Are there any thoughts about sort of the efficiency on electric EV kind of for airplanes and what that cost?
I don't know about the cost, but I know it's lithium-ion batteries that they're customizing for these planes. And then some of them are running on sustainable fuel. And I had this image when I was saying about fueling mid-flight, some of it's on agriculture waste, municipal waste. Imagine what that would look like if you're trying to fuel in mid-flight. So I don't know the cost of it, but I think it would have to be worked out. But the batteries that they're designing are specifically for this and specifically for the weight. And as I mentioned in the piece, NASA is involved in creating just a more aerodynamic design than what we have now for wingspan and wing and just the way a plane would go. So they're kind of working in both directions on that.
Could you have solar panels on the planes?
Then I got to fly higher to the sun to get more juice
until your wings melt.
Yeah. Well, conversely, though, I could pull into a cloud and recharge during a storm because I could
hydrogen.
Right.
I mean,
planes. Are these planes going to be? Are they going to be? This is a dumb question, but are they going to be configurations smaller?
There are no dumb questions, John.
I asked a lot of.
So what was the question?
Oh, so the question is, do the planes themselves, like the size of the planes change or like the experience of a consumer?
Potentially.
Yeah.
The ones that I've seen so far seem to be smaller than what we're used to, let's say flying, we're on a passenger flight. So that's still being in the works. But what was interesting when I was looking at the future plans and future investments, the investment and the market is projected to grow. And they're saying even by 2030, we're going to start to see this more widespread. So the technology is growing. It's not quite here yet. We've had some flights that have flown short distances, maybe 200 miles on sustainable fuel. Yeah. Like even Virgin Airlines had one. So it is happening on a smaller scale. There's an Israeli company that's just got, I think, more funding on this. So we'll see more of it, but it's still in the very early stages.
Are there certain airlines too that would be at the forefront?
Sorry?
Are there certain airlines like that are looking into this or more aggressive about this for like shorter flights? Like
yes, in the UK, Airbus just got funding. They actually just this week announced it that they're going to be investing more in sustainable air travel.
Well, Airbus is Boeing's main, that's one of the two plane manufacturers.
Duopoly, right?
So for instance, there's that company out of Denver or Colorado, Mitchell, that's doing supersonic flight. And I think they were looking at more sustainable, because jet fuel is probably one of the dirtiest fuels in terms of pollution out there. And what was the name of the company? Was it Boom or something?
I think it's Boom. I can't remember.
Yeah.
Yes.
But look, I know in the world of boats, there are electric boats for sale, and they're big. They're not little rowboats or something. There's some big electric boats. I do think it's the future. I think like something like Tesla, for instance, right? Its future might be in building and designing better batteries than in necessarily building cars, right? I think that the battery...
That is the holy grail of Silicon Valley, by the way. That has been for years. Building batteries.
If we could build lighter batteries that store more, that recharge faster, then all of these things are possible.
Are these the same people who promised me a flying car 10 years ago?
I was just going to mention.
I saw a recent article. There's a company coming out with a flying car.
It's going to be electric.
There's several. Yeah, there's several working on it.
Well, you know how some people with electric cars, I know this was like a few years ago when I was looking at them, let's say to buy one. Some people are apprehensive, like you said, let's say to go in an electric plane, but would they be less apprehensive if it was a hybrid model? If we said we're using...
Well, no, that's the popularity of plug-in hybrids.
So that's what NASA is working on now with those hybrid models. And I saw some at Gatwick Airport in London. So that might be a way to ease people into it.
You remember all these flying car stories we would do like 10 or 15 years ago?
So imagine getting on the airliner and you look at peer into the cockpit and there's one tablet that's the interface for all the controls. We've changed the interface.
Imagine looking in and there's no pilot.
And
AI's got it.
Yeah.
Would we try this maybe with shorter flights early on and see?
I think that's the way to do it.
Absolutely, that's what they're doing.
Because when you look like the airline business in the U.S. and even quite frankly in Europe, it's always that hub and spoke kind of thing, right? And Airbus had to they stopped making the 380, the double decker, because there just wasn't enough routes that had that kind of traffic that was required. They went to the 350. here in the U.S., so many regional airports are starved.
Yeah.
Because no one wants to fly really a prop job, though I kind of like them. But, even the regional jets like the Embraer or Bombardier jets, they're not efficient enough. I mean, if we could get really cost efficient so we can break out of that hub and spoke.
It's almost like a super light rail service, right? Like,
yeah.
But regional airports would have these, or you'd even like a commuter flights, ostensibly, like when people go from.
So if I want to go from Memphis to Austin, I don't have to go through St. Louis. That would be
great. Yeah, no, I mean, that's the idea here, right? Break the hub and spoke model, but we'll see. Anyway, Bonnie, great work on that one.
Thank you.
And just a quick plug, right? So that is on our Techstrong TV. The video we showed you is on Techstrong TV under Ecotech Analyst Insights. It's Ecotech Insights. Bonnie's, has quite a library of content on this subject. So if you are a greenie or you like this kind of stuff, go check it out on Techstrong TV. Just look under series for Ecotech Insights. Right?
That's right.
All right. Okay. Guys, I think that's going to wrap Techstrong Gang for Thursday. And we'll be back tomorrow.
I hope so.
Let's hope so. Okay. John, Mitchell, thanks for joining us. Bonnie and Mike, thank you. Thank you out here for watching and listening and writing and keeping us, honest here at Techstrong Gang. We love doing this. We'll be back tomorrow with more. For now, though, that's it. We're out.
Cloud Native Now is the web's leading resource for the growing cloud native ecosystem. CloudNativeNow.com is your destination for news, thought leadership, features, and webinars on cloud native architecture, Kubernetes, serverless, cloud native application development, microservices, service mesh, cloud native security, and more. Stay on the cutting edge of modern application development at Cloud Native Now.